I'm actually, we've been looking forward to this. So, um, I'm Jerry Bowie. I'm a clinical social worker. Um, those of you that know anything about me, I've been running Pride counseling for a long time. Back when we discovered gays, I started my practice.
That was a long time ago.
Shush. You are not on camera yet.
I wasn't ready.
Also, in this lifetime, I've traveled the world and worked with lots of indigenous and shamanic and energy healers, if you will, in very traditional ways. And that's kind of what I bring to this podcast. This is John Cottrell, and John's originally from Oakland. He is, I was going to say a massage yogi. He's a yoga master. If you've ever taken a class from John, you will deeply appreciate your body and yoga. And he's also a PhD psychologist. And then Nick Walton is
Hi, everyone.
grew in Colville.
Specifically Wanship, Jerry, not
Okay.
Colville. There's a different. All right, some people know.
But then moved to Boston.
I did.
Lived there for 17 years. He is
25.
a nutritionist and functional coach. He's
Person that
worked with
kicks your butt.
Tia's, worked with me, worked with lots of people. And the three of us come from very different places in the country and the world, perspectives on what it means to be gay. We started a year ago a podcast, and the podcast was a byproduct. We kept ending up on my back patio having these really deep conversations.
With me mostly crying, just so everyone knows.
And we thought, we need to include other gay men in this conversation. And you may not know this, but you're going to learn it in a few minutes, right? In this day of social media, gay community has shifted from bars and clubs, which were used to be kind of our cultural centers, if you will, and now it's turned into Grindr and Scruff and some other kind of shady places. But what's not happening is conversations about who and what we are. And so the podcast is meant to be a catalyst. I'm not showing up as the expert in social work or the expert in yoga. We're just three guys who are talking about our lives, and we're just randomly picking conversations and discussions and recording it. And maybe we're pissing people off, or maybe we're provoking other conversations, or we're educating. We have a huge straight woman fan base, which I don't know how that happened. A friend of mine called me the other day, I love your podcast. I said, well, it's not for you. So it's kind of turned into something. We have really kind of created a following. And part of my fantasy, and I'm starting to see this a little bit, is that the conversations we're having on this podcast will happen in different places. I mean, our podcast has kind of reached different places around the world. So I know we're reaching people and touching people. And so we thought, how interesting, would it be interesting for us to have one of our very organic conversations about our lives and to let you listen about how gay people talk about you when you're not in the room. So we're going to pretend like you're not here. On the other hand, we also want you to participate at some level because we want to be able to talk about what is of interest to you. So what I would like to do, we have a backup topic, but it won't be near as interesting as potential topics that you might have. And so I know we've got therapists, nurses, maybe some medical people, right? We're all in the helping services, and you are intersecting with queer folk in some capacity or another. Is there a topic you think, I would really like to hear a conversation about something? Does anyone have a suggestion or a thought that they'd like to pick up on? I'm assuming you all feel 100% competent when it comes to meeting with your queer identified clients. I know everything gay I'm supposed to know.
Question?
'Cause I've been doing it for 30 years and I don't. What's that?
I guess a question that I have is depending on like what is it like culturally?
What do we look like as a culture?
No. Within like ethnicity
Okay.
So one topic idea, just so I'm getting this on mic, full disclosure, as I interrupt this little moment, is that we're recording this and we've got mics up here, so I'm just going to repeat your question. So if I heard you correctly, something around just kind of the culture around coming out, maybe even languaging, how to maybe relate or speak to a potential client, let's say. Okay.
And what that might look across cultural communities.
Oh, I like that.
And
Okay.
if you can add small town rural to that.
Small town rural.
Do we have anyone?
Oh, I know a lot. Definitely do, yeah. Yeah.
Any other thoughts?
What about shame? I'm thinking about each of your backgrounds and how shame can show up in those different worlds.
How shame can show up. Yeah. Yeah, we've had that conversation. Woo.
There's a reason why I went to school in Boston, because it's 100 miles from where the shame occurred, for sure.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Yes?
I work with incarcerated men,
Mm.
and we often talk about masculinity. And so I guess I'm curious about the definition of masculinity and how that affects straight men and gay men.
Ooh, definition of masculinity, how it affects, and how both straight and queer identifying men might identify that or define that, yeah?
This is something I heard, you hear things, you read things, that people are no longer coming out, where I guess that's more of a millennial Gen X boomer generation thing. And so I just want to hear you guys debunk that. Is that no longer a thing?
Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's a
is
great
is
question.
coming out still a thing?
Because as I'm hearing that question, I'm thinking developmentally, what we've done in 2025 wasn't in existence in the 80s or 90s, right? And so developmentally, there's a lot of the question of identity and gender and sexual orientation. It's almost like a rite of passage. Everyone is asking the questions. And so maybe coming out is not as prevalent as, but yeah, we could have, can we weave all this together? Not a problem.
You remember everything?
Yeah, yes,
I'm thinking a lot about the political climate right now.
we are too.
Mm.
Yeah, I'm sure, and I think about the trans students that I work with in my schools, and how their very existence is called into question, and how do I help someone dealing with that type of fear
Mm,
every
yeah.
single day.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just have a lot of only empathy and worry
Yeah.
for what that feels like and what that will look like.
Exactly. Yeah, just the question of the political climate now and how, in particular, how it is affecting our trans brothers and sisters, and yeah, just what that looks like now and how potentially that could look like down the road.
Okay, so what we're gonna do is we'll probably do a bit of an intro,
Mhm.
like we normally do, and then we'll probably start this conversation. And for it to kind of get the authentic kind of flow that we get, we're just gonna converse amongst ourselves. And we kind of agreed, once we're kind of like into it and got the vibe going, if there are questions or parts that you want to participate in, then we'll start drawing you in. Okay? Any questions? Don't screw this up for us, because we didn't record on Friday.
All right. All right. So welcome everybody. This is the Mindfully Gay podcast. I'm John. This is Jerry. This is Nick, and we're in a live studio audience with us today. And we've had several questions coming from our audience here in topics that we could potentially talk about, and I think they're all very relevant for today, and what can be taken back to the therapy office, the clinics, etc. And where do we begin? Where do you want to begin?
I mean, if I can, I think just to reflect on just the breadth of questions or ideas that were just brought up in this room and what it indicates to me. And I think one of the most important reasons why we come together on this podcast and have these conversations is to facilitate community. And these types of questions are indicative of, whether or not the individuals that are bringing up these questions are in the LGBTQ plus community or not. They're indicative of humans that want to help facilitate community for other humans. And I think that is the goal very much of this podcast and of this Mindfully Gay, concept, this group. And so I think that, just from the start, it just feels very good to be in this room with those questions to answer.
And maybe I'm going to start with a story. And this was probably late 90s, maybe early 2000s. And I think I'd already started my practice. And I remember I had to go see a doctor. I think I was changing insurance, and I needed to have a new primary care physician. And he looked in my ears and my eyes and other places. And my physical was going quite well. And I thought, it's probably relevant for him to know that I'm a gay man. And so I said, I'm a gay man, I'm in a relationship, and I just want you to know that because some of my health concerns may be in relationship to that. And what I remember was this man who was very warm and friendly stopped being warm and friendly. It wasn't rude. I could just see the hesitation in his chest. I could see it in his eyes. And he stammered for a minute and said, "Oh, well, have you tested for HIV?" And my response was, is that a standard question, or is that just a question because I'm gay? And that's just what he told me in that instance, is his knowledge about my potential health concerns centered around my sexual activity and my HIV status. And I think about that frequently because I don't think that was a bad doctor. But what was really clear is in that moment, he was caught off guard, and I got a glimpse of who he really was in relationship to who I really am. And so what's encouraging for me is to sit in a room with healthcare providers, mental health providers, who are willing to say, we need information. And we want to have a better working relationship with our clients.
We need information, and how can we help?
Yeah.
Right? That's the key.
So we had several questions come up. I'm stuck with the question about coming out.
I like
Okay.
that. I like that
Yeah.
one too.
Yeah.
Is that still a thing? Is coming out still a thing?
I love that that's a question right now. That speaks volumes to where we are now. And and I'm sorry, I'm jumping right in,
No,
but
go ahead.
I love that question. It's an excellent question. And I think I'm so happy that we have people coming into this world now that know that they can just be, and it's encouraged for them. The gender fluidity, the do you like this place on the salad bar or this place on the salad bar? Like, it's very different now, and it's a really, I think, a very exciting thing. I think for me personally, what it means is when I'm in a grocery store and I see two young dudes holding hands, I can start to let go of that very much, like, oh my God, don't do that. Do you know exactly rural places? Don't behave that way. You can't, you guys are going to be in trouble. And now we're at a place where we're asking, like, are people even going to the fuss of having to do this anymore? They can just be who they are. And I think it's a very wonderful, it's a question that's indicative of a lot of very good progress over the past 20 years at least.
What I'm drawn to is when we ask that question, is coming out still a thing? Like, who does that refer to? Like maybe what age group, or even gender, or what the topic is, or how is someone coming out, air quotes? Because I can argue that some of the people that I'm working with are, I'll just say, more mature men or older men who are now just coming out and have had another life before this. Either they've been married, they have children, maybe they've been in the church, now they're out, or they're divorced or something. But now, after some time, they've discovered or figured out, I'm gay. And And I think there is a process still for some folks, that there is a coming out process. And but I'm thinking about kind of a younger population, younger group, where maybe coming out isn't really a thing. It's just I could be who I want to be, and I can hold hands with my girlfriend, I can hold hands with my boyfriend, and I'm just okay with that. I didn't have to come out. I'm just who I am. So I wonder if there's like a line. I don't know.
I think we honor both. That's the truth. I'm again so happy that you're exactly right. I'm only thinking about the younger. I'm only thinking about the people behind us, that get to come into this world and learn how to be adults or whatever. But you're absolutely right. It is important for us to also honor the fact that there are still people in their 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s that are going to come out then, and that is a crucial, important thing for us in our community to foster and respect, and not have this flippant, oh well, the young people are, they're all holding hands and triplets walking or whatever. It's a different place for them, but we have to honor where those other people are, the people literally behind us, the elder generations that do need to come out. They need that process.
I want to make a distinction. This is where the therapist voice comes out. Because I think the question of sexual orientation is much more normalized in urban areas like Salt Lake City, or right, like there's maybe a little bit more permission to just kind of grow and say, well, I want to take John to the prom versus Mary, right? However, if I'm identifying in some transgender or gender fluid way, right? If I'm brought into the world as Jerry and decide I want to be, I was gonna say Jamie, but that's kind of a neutral name. If I want to be female or identified as being female, that's a very definite coming out process that looks very much like the coming out process looked like in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. It's full of drama. It still can be very painful. I think there's places where that's improving, but I feel often that our transgender community, as far as the nuances of coming out and social acceptance, they're about 25 years behind us. And so I would say, yeah, I see that this layer of acceptance, and then I'm going to bring into it the question about culture, because I think, well, if I'm raised in a really conservative religious family, if I'm raised in a really stout Christian family, or in different parts of the country or the world where it may be a lot more conservative around these ideas. I spend a lot of time in Mongolia, and people come out. I think there's a very different social reaction to it that is centered around concepts of masculinity. Yeah. So I think there's a lot of variables, but what I find hope, especially for the gay and lesbian community in particular, and our bisexual community, is urban areas seem to have done a much better job of normalizing that for sexual orientation.
You're right, and I'm not apologizing for how enthusiastically I embrace the younger people have got it so good right now. It's good that we're having these conversations. This is how we podcast, because that is an honest response to that. But at the same time, I'm thinking about elders, that need to come out still, and how we need to respect that. Rural people, trans rural people specifically, what coming out means for someone like, that's a crucial coming out. We have to protect and help those individuals. And so, I guess I'm not backtracking on my answer, but I think it's important for me to acknowledge that I was just dead set thinking about the 20-somethings, and not everyone is a 20-something in an urban area where they might have a choice. And so for those people, it's great where they're at right now. But yeah, to answer the question again, we have to honor those that need to come out when they do, because it is still very much a thing.
What I'm thinking now that we're kind of starting to see that there is this kind of this broad spectrum of like age group, social economic status, where you might live, et cetera, or even religious background. I mean, there's so many factors involved here. There's just a wide spectrum of of what that coming out might look like, and if it isn't, even if it's identified as a coming out. Now I'm just thinking of in the mind of a therapist or counselor or even a friend or ally. How do I sit with that individual, who is coming out? What would they need from me? Because I'm thinking about your experience with the doctor, where you just made note that I'm a gay man, and you could feel a shift in the energy. And we've had this conversation before where, I think folks of a queer nature can sense that pretty quickly, and it puts up a quick wall where I know for me it becomes harder for me then to just continue to be myself and be honest and open with a friend or doctor or a therapist, because I can already feel some doors kind of closing. It's like, can I be open and honest with this individual, whoever is before me? And so how can we show up as ally, as therapist, as clinician, as nurse, as doctor to this individual, or even maybe a group of people, in a way that is supportive, is empathetic, compassionate, and all of that? And one of the things, and there might be many answers to this, and maybe we can get some ideas from you too as well, is I think it's okay to state your ignorance.
No, that's it. Yeah.
And it's like, I don't know a whole lot about that. Tell me your experience. Tell me your story.
That's it.
So I can get a better sense of you, rather than kind of this generalized, here are the questions I'm supposed to ask because you're a gay man. Click, click, click.
Right.
That's a door shutting, right? But if I get to know you, then I think personally I'm gonna lean in a little bit more. It's like, they want to know me, so I might be more likely to share my story and what I'm needing.
It's you asking. I mean, just like we're kind of fleshed out in this room right now. It's the excitement over the 20-year-olds that maybe don't even need to come out anymore. But yeah, there are definitely other people. There are other folks in this world that still need that process, and that's defined by where they live. It's the institutions around them. It's the family they have around them. It's the way the family was raised. It's the programs we were given at birth. I think a lot of people in this room know the 4 Agreements. You made us read that book once, and that is something that has really stuck with me. And so you're absolutely right. It's to ask not only what does that mean to you coming out, but tell me about yourself. The parameters of you, so that I can understand what it's going to mean for you to come out.
Mm-hmm. I've heard stories. I hear what you guys are saying, and this is maybe for folks to hear, is I will frequently get clients come to me, and kind of an intake question is, have you worked with someone before? Have you done counseling before? Oh yeah, I worked with counselor so-and-so. And I'll be like, is there any reason why you didn't go back to counselor so-and-so? Well, they really helped me with my depression. They really helped me with whatever. But I noticed that when I started talking about having these feelings or thinking about this, I could tell they couldn't go there. Or I'm in the therapist's office and I just kind of inherently know to not include you in all parts of my life. And I'll find someone else that I can do that piece of work with. Mm-hmm. And then I've had clients come to me and say, when I started talking about my life as a gay person or how I identified with gender differently, the therapist would say, I'm really not comfortable doing this. I have to refer you. Mm. Right? And think about the implications of, I really like you, but now I know too much about you and I can't. Right? So I think it becomes this interesting dilemma. And what's interesting is it felt like so much of those narratives were becoming less and less until it became politically favorable to demonize and ostracize the queer community. And right now there's a huge target on transgender folks' back. And they're literally in trauma. I was telling a colleague earlier today that when 9/11 hit, that was a real challenging time because I found myself caught up in the drama of what had happened with 9/11. But all my clients were also caught up in it, and I had to kind of find some way of how do I navigate this conversation. And what's interesting, because I work with probably 70 to 75% queer folks, I'm finding that same conversation happening where my clients are showing up feeling traumatized and anxious about what's my future in this country. And I don't know, does anyone relate to that? Yeah. I mean, it's a very deep experience. And so these questions of coming out and being a bit more deliberate in our right to exist is suddenly feeling very compromised. And I know for me, I will offer this because I'm guessing this is how I respond to my clients. Having lived through the Reagan years, and we're very honest on the podcast, if you don't like it, bye. No. You know, the Reagan administration tried to exterminate us by not responding to HIV. And what the queer community did was we became brilliantly creative in exploiting that platform. ACT UP, Queer Nation. We took over a cathedral in New York. We played Dead in the Streets. We found very creative activist voices that changed the political conversation. When gay men were dying, lesbians stood up and took care of us. We bonded as a community. And in that bonding, we only got stronger. Mm-hmm. And Harry Hayes, who was an early gay activist in the 40s, used to talk about the theory of Darwinism is that a species ceases to exist when it's no longer serving a purpose. And the question is, how is it that we're surviving and thriving as a tribe? And so when I talk to my clients about being in that place of fear, I usually shake them up and I'll say something like, I'll just do it with you. It's like, you know what? Get off your Facebook, get off your Instagram, get off social media, get your ass out in the streets and make your voices known. And guess what? We're creative and we're powerful. And they can try to snuff us out, but they've never been successful because our voices are that powerful. And so the GOP doesn't get to control us. We get to control us. And we are going to be powerful in that response. And then I start putting people to work, right? So you can sit on the pot and feel sorry for yourself, or you can find something within yourself, get activated, and let them understand your relevance in society.
Mm-hmm. And if I can, you're absolutely right. And I think that takes a lot of courage to do that. And I think that it's easier to have courage and attempt to do something like that when you have community, when you have others around you that are in the same pickle and we're in it together. And I think that kind of goes to start to answer maybe the question you had brought up, because it gets me very emotional, but our trans members of our community are a target right now. That thing in his speech making a joke about trans mice or whatever, just, and the ho 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 laughing, the bullshit that happened, it's just, those people see something like that, and I cannot imagine, I didn't live through Reagan, but this is, I guess, theirs now, what they're seeing, and we have to build a community for them to feel safe. Your question, your very thoughtful question about how we can help them feel safe. When I've had 2 other training clients ask me the same question, because people are concerned and they want to open up their wings for them to come under and protect them, but they just don't know how. And it's the first step is asking how. The question has to be asked, right? But then the next thing after that is we come together and we create space. We put the algorithms for worry away, and we meet and have eye-to-eye conversations, and we get to know people. And that is how, that's how we're in this community. That's how we're going to make other members in our community feel safe and feel a part of it. Is we have to make that very, very clear, just as clear as that thing did in his speech. We have to make it just as clear, just like Jerry's saying. We are talented. We have a presence here. We always have. We have to use that now more than ever to signal. Because talk about a signal. Correct me if I'm wrong, but this is the first state in the nation to pass that bill that a pride flag cannot be out in front of a business. Is that correct? That's a signal of safety to people. That tells us that we're safe going in there, and that's gone now, and that's a huge mistake, and it's not gonna look well on the GOP, I don't think, by any stretch. But
you have to applaud Salt Lake City.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, you're right. That's right. I've seen them out. So educate me. I'm sorry. There was something.
Well, Salt Lake
yeah.
City changed their
Good.
logo of their
Okay.
flag to incorporate
Okay, good.
other communities. I want to bring up a piece. I think we were talking a lot about queer folks. I think the other place where I've seen a huge evolution is in families. I used to get phone calls all the time about, oh my God, my kid is gay, and how do I protect them? And now I've got parents trying to out their kids before the kids come out. Right? It's like, I think my gayest kid.
Right.
Where do I get the rainbow flag?
Yeah.
It's like,
Right.
slow
Their
down.
starter
Right?
set. Send them an Amazon link. No, it's
but,
all
but I do think there's an evolution happening in family systems. Religion is not as rigid as it used to be. Some are, but not all. But I think there's a lot of space to find allies now, when before I would say allies were very difficult to find. And I just think, you brought up this piece of community, and that really goes to the core of what we're trying to create with Mindfully Gay. Even these conversations, I've had clients, I've had friends who've listened to the podcast, even my straight friends will say, God, these are great conversations. Like, these are things for me to contemplate about my own identity, my own sense of well-being. One of our platforms is body, mind, spirit, and so we look at how do we nurture the body, how do we nurture the mind, the spirit, and how do we find those broader expressions of who we are outside of the stereotypical norms. And it's in community. Mm-hmm. It's getting gay and trans men off the apps, if you will. The apps can be fun, but letting them know that there's options outside of the apps. And what we have found is the hesitation. There is kind of like this internalized anxiety about showing up to have the conversations. People will listen to it. People will text us and email us, but an actual retreat can be somewhat intimidating. And yet when we do the retreats, there's a powerful magic that happens in that collaborative energy of we call them heart circles. It's not therapy. We're just, what's going on in your world? What does that look like? And we're just going to sit here as your brothers and witness that. And then maybe we'll do a heart opening yoga exercise, or we'll do a ritual. We do this fire ritual where we let go of old stories and step into a new story. But all of us have been a part of those retreats, and I don't know, what's your experience about what you see at the retreats?
This is making me think about just going back to that just community and what that might look like, how like a family unit might create a community for other parents who have gay and queer kids, as an example, or just queer folk in general. Where do I go? How do I find that community? How do I find that tribe? So I'm just thinking about shame. And feeling like I don't fit in, and I've got to almost be something else or try to look like something else, or in order to be liked and appreciated and accepted in any circle that I walk into. And I think that's what's making it hard for some folks to show up to some of our events, like a heart circle or a retreat, because they've got to be quite vulnerable, and that's scary. But once they're there and have taken that risk of just walking through the door and showing up and seeing and feeling like, oh, I am accepted just the way that I am, and there's just these open arms.
And people want to know me how I am, right? That's
Yeah.
the thing. There are people here that want, not only am I okay going in how I am, but there are actually people there that want to know more about me. That's a huge, huge thing.
Exactly. And that you don't have to get too hung up. I don't have to get all hung up about, oh, how am I going to show up? How am I going to be dressed? How am I going to speak? What words I use, et cetera, or even talking about what I do. Is that going to be accepted? If I can just let that go and just show up, just walk through the door, knowing that I'm going to be okay. Because I think that's what we're trying to create, just a space that just feels inviting, open, receptive, just an open heart, an open circle, where you can just speak the way that you want to speak, or not speak.
But you're missing, so you coined this many episodes back, and it's the perfect tagline for what, I mean, it's not going to sum up everything you're saying. I'm not trying to say that, I'm sorry. But you're forgetting to say it's a place to practice.
It's a place to practice.
It's a place to practice connecting socially with people. That's what it is. So there's no pressure. It could be whatever it may be, but it's just your chance to actually practice with real life humans, right?
Right.
Because the way we're going with phones, we're all going to have AI friends, like clans of friends or something that we're going to be checking in with, I guess, to make sure that they're happy with us or whatever. But like, let's hope we don't do that. And instead, exactly, this is an opportunity for people that are maybe, that are shut in, that are taking the cues from the outside world, and those are pretty dismal and horrible right now for a lot of people. And so understandably, why would they ever want to go out into that world? And so this is a chance to put the phone away. When we host these retreats, when we have these events, even if it's game night, book club, we're hiking, whatever it may be, the phones are gone, because it is a chance to also practice that very important thing of just managing your consumption with this massive tool of worry. I mean, that is what the algorithms are really good at doing for the most part. It is a chemical response. Sometimes it can be a happy thing, but more often than not, it is called doom scrolling for a reason. And it is doom digging, if anything. It just gets you down into a deeper place that is harder to get out of. And so this retreat is a chance to practice all of that, to just put pause on the thing that maybe isn't serving you so well and just try something different with other people that are also trying something different.
And that's the thing, that's the point, is that I'm not alone in this. When I show up to these events, other people are feeling these same anxieties. They've done the doom scrolling. They know where I'm coming from. And so I don't have to pretend anything. I can just show up and we can relate, because we're kind of going through the same things, right? And just to remember that. And I think that's not just for our retreats and the events that we do, but I think in other circles too. If I feel like I can walk into your office or clinic or social space or clinical space, that I feel invited. I feel like it's just open, that I've got someone who's just going to listen to me and just be there, maybe just ask questions. How are you? What's happening? What's going on? And get to know me. Then all that guardedness will start to fall away. It really does. And our authenticity starts to show up.
And if I think what even can happen further, because I'm thinking about that example with you in the doctor's office, and I didn't hear that story before. I'm sorry to hear that, but I'm glad it's the example we're talking about right now. Because not only that, I think that an individual, yes, the guard can come down, but there are next steps to galvanize after that. There are next steps that I could have, the man that I am now, if I sat in that office and that was the reaction or response, I would have maybe had some words for that individual to just explain, to let them know that makes me uncomfortable. I have every right to be breathing air right here and talking about these issues, because you're a clinician and we're approaching this from a clinical perspective. But so I think, it's a process of understanding that there are actually other humans that want to know who I am and how I am, and they care about it. But then moreover, it becomes a process where you become galvanized and you can come out into this world, and then you can start creating space and community for other people. And I have seen that with people that have shown up with the groups that we've done. Right. Andy in particular is someone that I'm thinking about, who I've seen recently, and the transformation is astounding. Right. And I know that it is about getting to a place of letting your guard down and knowing there's love out there, but it's also about getting to a point where you can build up your armor of who you need to be. Not armor, that's maybe not the right word, but I think everyone in this room knows what I'm getting at, is building up a suit of confidence so that you can actually go out into the world and be yourself confidently, regardless of what the signage says, whatever your phone is telling you, whatever the man on stage in front of the GOP is saying. Like, it doesn't matter anymore. And it becomes, you get adjusted to this way of life that maybe seemed utterly impossible before, but now you're here, and now you're available to be in service to others that need that process.
You know, I want to, we had a topic picked out before we came here, because we thought, well, let they just sit there and they don't say anything. And I'm not going to tell you what the topic was, but this is what the question would have been. And I'm offering it because I'm thinking it's a contrast. Because what we do in these circles is try to challenge the stereotypical norms and ideas, right? We've talked about some of those, like I have to look a particular way, I have to show up a particular way. My body is my clout. My sexuality is my clout. I'm being judged through those particular lenses. The broader narrative in society is gayness is something we have to kind of put up with. It used to be an evil, now we just kind of put up with and we tolerate, right? The question that I often ask my clients who are coming in carrying that luggage, and most of them are, internalized homophobia is real. And we all have it. I mean, we sit there and so we work out together, and sometimes I'm like, okay, now chill. You know, that could be your story or that could be my story, or right? Because we're all trained and socialized in that same culture to view our sexual identities as a deficit. And if I am not operating within the gender norms expected of me, that's somehow a deficit, and we'll just pretend like we don't see you, right? And so a question I like to ask my clients is, what are the gifts and blessings of you being gay? What is your gayness bringing into the world that the muggles can't bring in? Now think about that for a moment. If you're queer, maybe ask yourself that question, or if you have queer loved ones, what is the unique blessing that it is in your life? And as you're thinking about that, so I quiz you. No. But as you're thinking about that question, what I see in clients is I literally see their eyes roll in the back of their heads because it's like their mentality, the momentum of that deficit thinking gets halted for a moment, and they have to recalibrate. Well, what is the blessing, right? What is it that I'm bringing into the world that a straight person or a cisgendered person could never introduce? What do you bring into the world through your queer lens?
First off, I love that approach, because I think, and we do this a lot on the podcast, it's, we're asking these kinds of questions, that we normally just don't ask, because I know I get stuck in that deficit mode, and, I'm not good enough because list, right? And the list is long. Without asking that question of, what are my gay blessings? What are my gifts? What are the offerings that I was born with to share with this world? What am I here for? What's my purpose? And it does makes me kind of sit back and think, because I can easily rattle off the deficits, but the blessings, and even call it blessings, is
You've been anointed.
Thank you.
God said, I'm sending you down as that gay little boy. What are you bringing?
What am I bringing? Gosh. when I think about my personal gifts and the blessings for being a gay Black man is I can break the stereotypes, and I feel like I have. That I can show up and be this individual who, as a teacher of yoga, as a teacher of mindfulness, as a teacher of, presence, that there can be a way to be in the world that doesn't always have to be about, altercations and confrontations and things like that, but we can take a moment and just sit back, take a step back, be still, be silent, be in the moment, and observe. And I feel like that's the gift that I'm able to offer not only my queer brothers and sisters, but just the world. That's my gift. When I stand up in front of my yoga classes and do my thing, I feel like I have been put there as a vessel from wherever the source is. I'm gaining information in a way that I can transmute it out to the world through this vehicle of yoga. That's my gift. And it's not only on the yoga mat. I'm able to then take that into every other part of my world through a gay lens as well. I can sit with my brothers in particular who maybe are just coming out and they're freaking out. And I can just sit with them and just be in stillness with them and offer a space of just mindful, intentional being with that feeling and making it okay. This is real. And I'm here to listen. I'm here to be here for you and with you in this moment. And if we can start to clear that space of ambiguity or not feeling like I fit in, etc., and just clear a space that they can start to see their own blessings and their own gifts and why they're here and why they're coming out now and what can help them advance and move forward in their lives. I feel like I'm able to provide that space. But even just saying that now is not easy for me to talk about and just say it in that way. Because I feel like, oh my God, they're looking at me. There's this weird, frou-frou kind of tree-hugging talk out there. And I have to shut that down too. Like what I'm saying is coming from an authentic space. Like this is why I'm here. That's my purpose. And the more that I can state that out loud, especially among friends and people I feel like I can trust, then my platform becomes stronger. The base that I stand on becomes so much more strong. And that's that confidence that I can, that's that armor, that confidence that I can wear proudly and walk out into the world with.
And that's an example. And that's I think, for me, I like this question. I think we answered this question on podcasts once before, and I'm trying to remember what my answer was. But my answer is different. I cannot remember exactly what my answer was then, but I know that my answer is different now, and it's indicative of the work I've been doing, kind of very similar to what you were talking about. But it's the gift, I think, the gift that it was to me, okay, growing up rural, growing up Mormon, growing up less than 3,000 people in the community, growing up with parents divorced when I was 5. There was just a lot of stuff. Okay, and as I started to 20s and 30s, I started to reflect on and I started to get angry at those things because look at what they did to me, okay? And so I ended up dragging around this bag of look at what they did to me. And I'm explaining the bag of what they did to me to people so they'll care. But then it was finally getting to the point of realizing that I can cut that bag and I'm done with it. I'm the only one holding on to that bullshit. I'm the only one that continues to bring it into the vortex of me and then I articulate the way that I do. And once I got rid of it and realized that, wow, okay, I can show up in my community now. I can feel good about being a gay person. I am a nutrition coach and a trainer, and I am an openly gay in doing so. Just because I'm gay doesn't mean that those services are anything different than any other, I guess, trainer would do, but it just so happens that I'm very good at what I do, and I happen to be gay while I'm doing it. And it's just a different me. And I think that's what's the gift for, the gift that it is personally for me is that I was able to do to the work to get to the point where I have gratitude for all that shit. The things that hurt me helped to shape me. And it's not right that those things happen, but that isn't what I need to do right now with those things. I need to recognize how it is the purpose that what they imbued me with, how I can get rid of dragging that bag around of all the problems and why everyone should care about those problems for me. Because if we just all collectively just pass them aside, then I can be a better person in this world. And that's the gift that I get to give to others, just like you're saying. Is you get to put in your brick in this foundation of community. And it is a solid, solid brick that others can then, the younger people you're talking to about coming out, they can see that as example and they realize, holy shit, I don't have to be a basket case that has to have a drink before I go into a social situation because I'm sure they're gonna hate me. You don't have to do that anymore. You don't have to run that script anymore. You can actually start to understand authentically who you are. And I think that's what gay has done for me. That's what it's done for me, and I think it's helping me to be better at helping others.
You know, what's coming out of this conversation, and I don't think, here's what I would say. I think if you are an individual who's living on the margins, whether that's gender, sexual orientation, race, you decide what the margins are. But I think in terms of queer identities, the magic and the medicine of coming out, if you will, and we've talked about this on the podcast before, about in lots of traditions, when someone is going through a particular stage of life or trial, there's some process of initiation. That moment is witnessed by the tribe or the community. It's celebrated, it's ritualized, it's held up. And in one of the podcasts, we fantasized about the idea that National Coming Out Day would be a day of queer ritual, where we would step forward and just celebrate our journey of coming out. And I use the word journey because to be in this world today and to identify as transgender, to identify as gay or lesbian, it's a very deliberate evaluation of who I am. I have to contemplate the relationships, those who suppose that I'm straight, those who suppose that I'm cisgender, those who think that that's who I am. I have to deliberately calculate stepping into that place of authenticity. And then when I step into it, there's no stepping back. I have to step into it, embrace it, and then evolve with it. And I think where all the privilege, the disadvantage of the privileged, if you will, is they can assume all those things and never question it. Mm-hmm. The world is designed to support that heterosexist, cisgendered norm. Mm-hmm. And so to me, that is a substantial gift. I get to deliberately calculate and decide how I'm going to show up in the world. Mm-hmm. And that's huge in my mind. And, one of the most popular events we ever did was we did a sweat lodge ceremony that was dedicated to queer folks, and the celebration and the initiation and the initiation of I'm queer and I'm here to celebrate that with my creator. Mm-hmm. And it was a very powerful experience.
It is a powerful experience. And I think that it kind of goes back to, how are queer folks showing up in your spaces too? Are we asking, about their gay blessings gifts, what they contribute to the world, their relevance in the world, because we don't get asked those questions. You know, like you said, society's set up in a different format. And when we have that deliberate process of coming out and stating and declaring who I am with authenticity and can stand my ground with that, it's a huge step and needs to be celebrated, needs to be elevated. In many cultures, not so much ours in this society, but in other cultures, as we've talked about, when I know it's really helped me in being myself, is that other cultures do celebrate this. When you can probably tell this story better, but in some tribes, some communities, and some cultures, when mother is going to have a baby, and they know this child is going to be coming into the world, there's ritual around that to celebrate this coming of this being and what they're going to be able to contribute to our community and to our tribe and this world.
Well, and what happens is the shamans, the medicine people, this is the Dagra people in Burkina Faso,
Yeah.
they divine.
Yes.
And the divination is, what purpose is this person bringing into the world?
Yeah.
Right? This woman's going to give birth. What is their purpose? And how do we as a tribe set them up to fulfill that purpose?
Yeah.
And interesting enough, the Dagra people as well, they don't necessarily use words gay, lesbian, or transgender, but they're known as gatekeepers because their tribal responsibility is the keepers of the technology of the indigenous ways. If there's a question about how to do ritual or ceremony, the gatekeepers are consulted because they're seen as special conduits for the ancestors to work through. And many native tribes in North America had a sacred space in their communities, whether they cared for the children or they were the medicine people and healers. They were seen before colonial times as having that wisdom and that capacity. And that's how I based that question about purpose is like, why are we here? Why do we show up in the world in this beautiful variation of the norm, right? What's that? What are we bringing into the broader culture? I'm curious, this might be a good space. Any thoughts about like the question of blessing or magic or medicine that anyone have any thoughts about what we're talking about? Should I just walk this in? Okay. So this is a microphone. So I'm not holding a button up to you.
Great. So in my journey of coming out, a gay man, I had a wonderful therapist who did IFS with me, did parts work, and integrated all parts of me. So when I came out to my kids, they were excited and proud of me and started labeling these gay parts of me. And I was so confused because I had integrated all of me into just being me. And so the man who sews and the man who cooks and the man who hugs them was gay parts to them.
Yeah.
And to me, it was just Dave.
Yeah.
It was just me. And so it took me a long time to wrap my head around what Dave was trying to see or say. So I finally pulled my kids together and had the conversation of, this is just me. It isn't gay or straight.
And they said, I know. No.
They did.
Yeah.
I'm also the father who can wrestle all of his boys and win and hauls hay and is a general contractor for 35 years and blah, 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 blah. All of those parts don't fit a gay or straight.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts as I hold the button?
But I owe it to a good therapist.
Yeah. Who ushered the gateway, created the threshold for you to walk through. Yeah. Yes.
Not a therapist. Work in homeless services in Salt Lake City. But my daughter came out last summer to me, and so I'm so excited. I guess it's just more just a comment. I'm just so excited. You all three are beautiful men, and I'm just excited to talk with her. She just turned 21 in May as a young woman, and this conversation that you've been having, I think it's really important, and it's really, you never know what the ripple effect is of, doing stuff like this. And I think I wanted to just talk about the phone just for a second, because I know, I agree, phones, can be horrible. But I think also, being uneducated, and we have more, connectivity, like with the TikToks, and you see all these amazing people and all their gifts and all their talents. And I think that has kind of created this culture among the younger, individuals that like everyone has talents and gifts to share. Like we're all here for a reason, and so just thank you for what you guys are doing.
Yeah, thank you.
I have something to say.
Yes.
So the same conversation you have been having about blessings and everything like that, it takes me back to 2021 when my niece was first born. Sitting in the hospital room, very much having that conversation with my sister, and her husband. Well, we don't know who she's gonna be. What if she is gay? What if she identifies as lesbian or trans? And just very much in that moment feeling like this celebratory conversation, this warmth in this conversation. But then very much recognizing my own fear, because I live in a heterosexual world. I'm not gay, I'm straight. How to support her if she does move into that world, and can I show up for her in the way she needs to? Because I very much catch myself in community when I see in radical love, like I see gay couples walking with their hands held very much out in the open, being authentic who they are, and I have to do a double take. I'm like, it's not from a place of like disgust or fear, but it's very much a place of like, it's still shocking. Mm-hmm. Because even in Salt Lake, it's not as prevalent as we want to think it is. Like, yes, we have leaders who are doing huge things with the flag, but we still have a lot of hate in our community. And there are moments where it's like, how do I show up as that person and let you know, like, I'm an ally to you, like, I support your space. And then, I'm sorry, I'm kind of rambling now, but no. It just, that conversation you're talking about with blessings very much took me back to that moment, because it's very much, I feel like with the gay community, it's this authenticity, it's this radical love, it's really being willing to come out and say, this is who I am and this is how I want to show up, shaping culture, shaping language, and who my niece is going to be, and if she is that person, and then how to support her through that. I think as a community, you guys do a lot of good work at saying, like, this is what it means to be free. Because even in my own work as a heterosexual female, the idea of chosen family, like, I've done a huge overhaul with my own family where I'm like, no, this is a boundary I don't want. I very much want who I identify as being family supporting me in my role. And yes, we share blood, but that doesn't mean that we're close. So,
yeah.
Anyways.
Really well said.
I'm going to sit down because it feels like that's a place to talk. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's a great question. That the question is happening. It's the real is indicative of the beauty and the goodness that is here. I don't have the exact answer, but I know that we're in a place where we're working on solutions, and it is by doing something. It's I mean, of course, getting up in a podcast, having this broadcast, me talking about my gayness and crying about it all the time or whatever it may be. Yeah, that's a real vulnerable place to be, and that it used to scare me. It doesn't like it used to, but it did. But I know that me doing that can help to answer that question, right? It's not a direct, you've got to do this, this, and this on this day, and that's your answer. It's that we've got to be open about who we are. And just like you're saying, we got to hold hands in the street. And I hear you. I'm still very much, I get so angry at myself that I'm just always like, oh my God, you're holding hands. I lived in Boston for 25 years. It's the gayest place in the world. I mean, but I still hear, it's still very much like, oh, it still just happens. But I try to do, I'm trying to do the work to be vulnerable, to open up, to let the signal, to send out the bat signal that we're here, to help kind of to answer that question. But it's not a specific answer. I think that,
Can I ask you, I'm just going to pick on you for a minute because you feel durable. If you were, use the word shocking. What was it's shocking to see two guys holding hands or two women holding hands. If you could express yourself without using the word shocking, what would be the word you would use?
Wait, can I do it? Let me just do it real quick, can I? I envy it. That's exactly what it is. I'm sorry. I'm trying to take the word right out. But so this is what happens in this podcast. We have therapy. It's mostly me. But that's what it is. Thank you for asking me that question, Jerry, finally. That's exactly what it is. I'm really sorry. But it is. Like, that's exactly what I do. I'm like, I'm envious of it. That's what happens to me. I'm like, it's not, it does feel like, you guys got to be careful. No, that's exactly what I'm doing. You guys be careful. Don't you know how worried I am about myself? That's what I'm trying to express in that glance, I think. It's that I'm envious that they're doing it and I'm not. I still to this day don't with my partner. I don't think he would want to. He probably would. I don't know. He would make jokes about it. But I mean, he's in East Boston. But anyway, but I'm so sorry. I'm sorry. That just hit me. That's exactly what I'm doing. I'm envious of what they're doing.
Okay. And I can hear where you're coming from because I think I can relate to that.
No, but we need to know where you're coming from.
Yeah.
That really was
Nick, it's not about you.
Yeah.
The word shock is not to come from a place of like hate or being super negative. It's more in the moment. There is a feeling like I'm concerned for your safety.
Yeah.
Like, I very much am reacting to that. I need to make sure that I saw what I saw. And then as soon as I'm like, no, they're just two people living their life, loving each other, doing what they need to do and showing up in this moment. And then it's very much a feeling of like celebration for them that they can do that. Because even as a heterosexual woman, when I have been in relationships, I'm not openly romantic or affectionate. I don't walk down the street with holding my partner's hand. And so for me, I think it's the radicalness of it, right? But it's radical in a positive way because these people aren't ashamed of who they are.
Right. That was going to be my other question. If we weren't using the word radical, what would express that concept?
You're putting me on the
Yes,
spot.
it's a tough one. I could try again, but I don't think I'm the one.
Kristen, I see it in you. Because I think I have that. I'm like, Nick, I have that same moment. I have these two guys at the gym, and every time I see them, I'm like,
Yeah.
what are you doing?
Right.
You're breaking the rules.
Yeah.
And then I have to look back and say, wow, my internalized homophobia, I grew up in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, and that just wasn't safe, and you deferred to privilege to get it. And so if I stepped out of the norm of privilege, yeah, it is shocking because it's not normative. And then I have to ask myself, of course that's okay. And it's interesting, there are times when my husband and I will show physical connection, right? So like if I have friends over to the house and there's muggles involved, then we're just kind of husbands. But like if his partner and they come over or John comes over, we'll sit on a couch, we'll hold hands, and because we feel safe, we feel secure, we feel like Pride Day is a festival for us because I really have no inhibitions. Like Salt Lake City's mine. I get it one day a year. But I think I like to listen sometimes to language. I think shocking is just a word that's frequently used. And I think we become dependent on it as a way of describing my discomfort with the idea that someone's breaking the rules of privilege. And when I take that in, that leaves me feeling awkward inside. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah. There's a question in the back, but I want to answer this in a moment. Is my reaction, my flip for that shock, I think is the same as yours. It's envy, and the question for me is, or the statement to me is, oh, I wish I could do that. I wish I could step into that boldness.
Yeah.
And then if I do see that, I find myself wanting to stare.
Study it.
I want to study it because it's out of the norm. I don't always see that, and so to see it, it's like I want to see it to absorb it somehow.
I want to ask them how they can do it.
Yeah,
That's what I want to do.
Yeah.
This is so dumb for me to admit this.
Same
it's
here.
true, right?
It's like I want to absorb
learn
that.
from them.
Exactly.
Definitely.
But then I get into my head about it, thinking, oh, now they're probably thinking that I'm staring at them because I'm judging them and all that stuff, right? But in reality, it's, wow, I wish I can do that. I want to step into that boldness, and I want to embrace whatever that is and rub that on.
Where was the question?
In the back there, yeah.
No, I was just, and it was more of a comment more than anything, but for some reason, when I see men holding hands or women holding hands or something that's, I guess, not heteronorm, I'm like excited.
Yeah.
I'm like, you go, you get that.
Exactly.
Like, that's so cool. And it's awesome to see the progression, because when I was in high school, that was not a thing.
Yeah.
And so now when I see boys taking boys to prom and girls taking girls to prom, I'm like, yes. I don't know, and maybe I do need to think safety, but I do work in the men's prison, and I teach a class, and I've noticed a trend where men will come out and be vulnerable to the whole class, and I just think it's so amazing and so cool, especially in that place.
Yeah.
That could bring them a lot of harm to say, hey, I'm gay. But they're happy to let me know, and they're happy to say something, and they even ask questions in regards to the topics that I'm teaching and how it relates to them. And I do very often say, I'm not sure, let me get back to you.
Do you know, it's interesting, I have a lot of community events at my house, and most events that I do have a very eclectic gathering of people, gay, straight, men, women, those who walk between genders. My husband and I, if you walk into the house, we're pretty nice.
Yeah, for the most part.
But one thing that I think culturally happens a lot with gay men who are out, like when Nick showed up, I don't hesitate to give Nick a hug. I don't hesitate to give John a hug, right? Would you say hugging is kind of like what gay guys do? And so a bunch of guys were coming to an event, and a lot of them were gay. And then I had a couple of my straight friends who were showing up, gay men or straight men. And so the gay guys were getting hugs, right? And the straight guys would just kind of sneak in. Yeah. And then at the end of the event, the gay guys were getting hugs on the way out. And a couple of the straight guys said, well, I want to be part of the team, right? Like they were like feeling like they were being left out. And I've often argued that the biggest victims of homophobia are straight men. Because, right, what's the most profound insult you could give a straight man is that he's a fag, right? And so I think a lot of straight men spend a lot of time protecting their sense of straightness and masculinity, and so there's not a connective, intimate connection. Even though their hearts may hunger for it, they're afraid to be vulnerable to it.
Well, and if I may, their program doesn't allow them to do it, right? And this goes back, this maybe comes in and brings in the question about masculinity, and what's going on, like basically, right? And it has everything to do with that program that we were given in the beginning, how it's defined. And I know for me personally, that has been a challenge, that in particular, that program, that line from that program. And what I have learned is that as the one that has been programmed, once you can understand how to program, how to reprogram, how to change the program, that's where dudes like that would be getting hugs, right? Maybe they need to work on their program a little bit. Maybe they did that night by being in that environment. In fact, it would sound, in fact, like they did have some program a shift in program.
Yeah.
For sure, for sure.
Do you have any more questions for us?
I just want to say I'm having an existential crisis right here. So I grew up rural, came here, was able to become myself, my bisexual woman, and my question was directed at the young kids. I do crisis work that I'll now be working. I'm going back to a very rural area. I've been working there for 9 months. And I finally took the plunge, and I've been commuting an hour and a half because safety.
Wow.
And I took that plunge and I bought a house in this town. And everyone's like, what the hell are you doing?
You are awesome. That's incredible.
I haven't even thought about myself. And the reason why is because I'm terrified to come out again. So I'm like all of a sudden labeled like queer. Like I didn't think But no, so this is all just so bizarre because I didn't realize until this moment that's what's going on. So I don't have anything else to say or great about that. I wish I had something to sum it up, but my mind is just blown and now I'm like having a therapeutic moment with myself. So thank you.
But you're having it with us, please,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
that's incredible. I mean, I know the rurality of what I grew up in, and my whole life there. I just wanted one person to tell me it was going to be okay. That's all that you are looking for, right? You moved you bought a home. You are there. You're putting down roots. People are going to know who you are in a great way. And it is going to have a profound effect, I would think, on that community.
Mm-hmm.
And so I totally get it. I know what you're talking about, that dilemma. But I don't mean to sound insensitive. I said, but if it were me, I would try to meditate more on the good that is definitely going to come from it.
His reframing of me coming into that as like a blessing and that coming out like I needed that so much because I didn't realize how much fear has been present in my body the last 9 months. And I live in the privilege of being a bisexual woman. So I can mask straight all day long if I wanted to, but God forbid I fall in love with a woman down there. But I also don't want to do that. I want to be fully and authentically myself for them, and to hold hands in the street, as you say. And so, it's just terrifying and beautiful, and
it's all of that, and even just just the showing up. To take that big step and to show up, because just your presence, out or not, is going to be profound. It's going to have that ripple effect. Yeah. And just because you're there and showing up with your magic is going to be astounding.
Well, and I as you were talking, I was thinking about the early gay movement. Harry Hayes in the 40s and 50s recognized, there was no gay. It was very secretive way of living. And what Harry did is he brought men into his home to talk about their lives, and they would have small groups, and that was the early beginnings of the Mattachine Society. And from the Mattachine Society, it started this, it was the nucleus of a voice that just grew and became bigger and bigger until we get into what we know as the gay rights movement today. But in the 40s and 50s, they met in this house, they closed their curtains, they met in secret, they shared their stories, and then they dispersed. Hope Against the Wind is a great documentary about his activism. But you're the hope in wherever you're going.
And the windows won't be shut. I mean, it's a different time now, right? That excites me very much. Mm-hmm. I think it's a really wonderful thing for that community.
Mm-hmm. Dad was all excited helping me move in. Which window are you going to put the flag in? Yeah. And I was like,
all right.
Do you want me killed the first week I move in? Like, what?
I hear you.
Wow. I'm also so blessed that is my foundation of my support.
For sure.
Mm-hmm. So, did you have a question? Do you want to hold the microphone?
My response to the blessing is it builds off your deliberation, right? There's this deliberate and this depth and being with and the love that can be experienced, I think. And then building off of that as well, I'm thinking of like this shadow piece, or like the dichotomy, right? What it is that we're afraid of, what it is that holds us back, what we're scared of or insecure about, like your blessings on the other side of that. So looking into that to find.
And if I can,
what you
it's
bring.
just right then as you did that, like that itemization, right? What's the dark? What's the negative? What's the complimentary piece to this? I get what you're saying, and I think it's funny, even in like, what's the risk? Like, what's the worst that could happen, right? Those are maybe some of the questions you start to answer when you try to identify what that is. And I don't know, just in that moment, as I immediately started to go into that, that response, that list, I realized that's fool. None of those things are anything. Like, it's not. It doesn't. What, my dad's gonna be upset with me? Like, I'm past it now. Like, when I try to identify that thing that you just said, that what is kind of the dark side to this, and then instead to just meditate on blessings. You're absolutely right. I think that's how I would approach it, as opposed to who's gonna shoot into this window. No, just stay focused on the blessings. But in that moment, I wanted to thank you. Once again, the therapy has happened. In that moment, I just realized when I tried to do that with being very out about my gayness, not in a in-your-face way, but just this is who I am. And then on the flip side, what is so bad? It's nothing. There's nothing. It's just silliness. There's just nothing there. I can't find it. And when I just spend some time with it, thinking about my father really being upset with me because I'm walking down the street holding my partner's hand, it just makes me laugh because it is so insignificant. Thank you. That helped me.
It's a reminder of just the process of it all, because I think it is okay and important to talk about kind of those dark sides and the things that we're afraid of, and all those closed doors and closed windows and behind, all of that. Because like I said, in the work that I do, I'm allowing folks to be aware of those things, acknowledge those things, even honor those things, even though they may be dark, because it puts us in a place of power, really, to acknowledge them, and then they start to kind of disappear and fade, and then the clear path shows up. In yoga, it's called vipassana meditation, where we just, let things just kind of pass and things start to clear. Vipassana means to see things more clearly. And so as we kind of get through those struggles, the hardships, etc., because I think it's important to acknowledge those things, because that's our reality in a lot of ways. But then something happens. There is, to use the proverbial, term, there's a light at the end of the tunnel. There's space, there's a path. And that's when we're able to then show up and walk more astutely and more confidently, and then look back and like, why was I worried about that?
What was that even? I don't know.
Why was I bothered by that?
Sure.
But that was real at some point. But we can get to a place where we're walking through it, we're walking past it, and stepping into, the realness of who we really are. I interrupted somebody.
I was just gonna add for your question, I don't know that I have a profound answer on what it means, like not so much focusing on the radicalness of it. The conversation, I appreciate your guys' vulnerability in this, and it very much has led me to also recognize that I still have a lot that I need to unpack as well. Because I obviously don't know who my niece is gonna be. But I have people in my life that I love and I care about, but there's still these feelings of like, am I showing up the way I need to? And so at the end of it, they're just human. Like, it's humanity. That's what it is. It's not radical. It's not shocking. It's human.
Mm-hmm.
And anyways, I appreciate your guys' dialogue and thought process.
Well, and I think I'm just kind of pondering where this conversation is going, and I think, the medicine of, what if God's design, and I use the word God loosely, God's design in bringing queer people into the world is to shake up everyone else, to examine the place of authenticity. We are in this chronic condition of constantly living the facade. What will the neighbors think? What would my profession think? What would, we're constantly living in that place. And I think shaking up the status quo, I think living outside the privilege. I used to have a bumper sticker that said, celebrate diversity. And what I've learned in my short time in this world is there's so much beauty and richness and tradition and cultures and rituals and ways of showing up in the world, polyamory and monogamy and queerness and racial connections. Like there's just so much richness there. And what would happen if we just collectively gave everyone permission to be brilliant in their space and in their way? And I think I like to think that the power of queerness is that invitation to take it in, and you can be revolted by it, or it can be an invitation to ask yourself, where is my authenticity? How do I show up in the world? And what I suspect is your niece, however she shows up in the world, what she will need is the container of loving relatives and friends and family that will give her permission to find whatever beauty and power resides in her existence, which is what we all want. Even Republicans.
And we can do that as professionals too. We can allow for that celebration of who this individual is that is before me, to celebrate in their uniqueness, in their gifts, their talents, and just to maybe not therapize, but to really celebrate and have conversation. Hey, what's up, girl? Just have the conversation. And I love that premise of giving each other that permission just to be in their brilliance. What would that be like? Just to show up in your brilliance and to allow others to shine just as brightly.
Just don't do it on I-15 in front of me going 45 miles an hour.
That's right.
No.
You don't want to get back.
So, close this.
All righty. Well, I want to thank all of you on behalf of the Mindfully Gay cast for joining us in this conversation about how to show up authentically, to talk about coming out, shame, political realness that's happening around us, and then being vulnerable and sharing your own stories with us, and hopefully, in this very, I'm going to say, therapeutic session. I know for me it's always an eye-opener, so I'm hoping this was an eye-opener for you in this occasion. Celebrate you, celebrate the folks that are around you that come to see you, and when we do that with our brilliance, they're going to show up in their brilliance too.
Yeah.
So that is our live broadcast of the Mindfully Gay podcast, and I'm just talking to you guys, the listener, the viewer. We're on YouTube, we're on Spotify, we're on Apple Podcasts, and we will see you next time on the Mindfully Gay podcast. Thank you for tuning into this episode of the Mindfully Gay podcast. If you enjoyed our conversation today, please remember to hit that like button and subscribe to our channel. This way you won't miss out on any of our upcoming episodes, where we continue to explore fascinating topics and share meaningful stories. Your support means the world to us. See you in the next episode.